I can still hear the judge's voice, quiet, like dust settling across a room. Yet somehow it carried through every corner of the courtroom. My father's smile vanished. His lawyer turned visibly pale. No one stirred. The judge fixed his gaze on an aging file that had remained sealed for decades, then looked up and delivered the words that would shatter everything we had kept buried. Bailiff, lock the doors. But to understand why that instant mattered, I need to start much earlier. My name is Eliza Carter, and for most of my life, I believed family was built on loyalty. My mother believed that too. My father believed in something very different. Growing up near Columbus, I was the child who never quite fit. My younger brother, Caleb, received praise for average accomplishments. My sister, Hannah, was cherished simply because she existed. I learned at a young age that excellence brought scrutiny rather than affection. When I came home with flawless grades, my father wanted to know why they weren't even better. When Caleb failed, he was met with sympathy and encouragement. I left home carrying little besides determination. I found work in a repair shop, developed my skills, and slowly built a life of my own. I married a good man named David, and together we raised 2 children. We never had great wealth, but our lives were stable and honest. I convinced myself that was enough. Then my mother passed away. Cancer took her little by little, and during her final months I stayed by her side while the rest of the family came and went. A few weeks before she died, she gripped my hand and quietly said, "One day, the truth will matter." At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. I wish I had. After the funeral, my father showed almost no grief. Instead, he spent endless hours meeting with his attorney, Leonard Whitaker. Not long afterward, things began to change. Properties were transferred. Trust arrangements were revised. Any questions were brushed aside. Then I received a letter informing me that I had been removed entirely from the family trust. When I confronted my father, he laughed. "Your mother isn't here anymore," he said. "Things change." Something inside me shattered in that moment, but another part of me grew stronger. I started investigating. The records didn't match up. Transfers seemed illogical. Shell companies appeared almost overnight. When I showed the documents to David, he quietly asked, "Do you think your mother knew?" I already knew the answer. I hired a small-town attorney named Sarah Klein. After reviewing everything, she said what no one else was willing to say. "This isn't right." So I filed a lawsuit. The consequences came immediately. Friends distanced themselves. Relatives cut ties. I became known as the daughter suing her own father. Even so, I refused to stop. 2 months later, while going through my mother's belongings, I discovered a cookbook. Hidden inside was an envelope with my name written in her handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. If you're reading this, I am gone. There are things I can never prove. If you need answers, contact Judge Harold Benson. Trust him. Love always. The next morning, I made the call. Judge Benson remembered her. When I met with him, he explained that my mother had suspected documents were being altered. To protect evidence, she had arranged for records to be sealed under court supervision and hidden until they were needed. For the first time, I felt a spark of hope. We filed motions requesting access to the archive. Weeks went by with no result. Meanwhile, the trial drew closer. Whitaker joined my father's legal team, polished, composed, and completely confident. The trial itself felt like slowly drowning. One witness after another praised my father. Caleb even testified against me. I sat there listening, feeling as though I was being erased all over again. Then, on the final day, everything changed. A court clerk entered carrying an old archive box. The judge inspected it, opened a sealed envelope, and began reading silently. The seconds stretched endlessly. Then he quietly said, "My God." He started questioning Whitaker about previous filings. The attorney hesitated. As inconsistencies emerged between the protected records and later transfers, the judge's tone grew increasingly severe. Then he spoke those words once more. "Bailiff, lock the doors." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. This was no longer simply a civil case. It had become something entirely different. An emergency recess was declared. Investigators arrived. Documents were examined. And when the proceedings resumed, the truth began to come apart piece by piece. Whitaker had known. The emails proved it. He had reassured my father while disregarding legal protections. My father had either trusted him without question or knowingly gone along with it. Caleb was called back to testify. Under pressure, he admitted he had noticed discrepancies but chose not to ask questions. "I didn't want to know," he said, his voice breaking. By the end of the week, a formal investigation had been launched. Whitaker left in disgrace. The story that had shielded my family for decades finally collapsed. Later, the court restored my portion of the trust and voided the fraudulent transfers. I thought I would feel victorious. Instead, I felt exhausted. Then Caleb called. He apologized. It couldn't undo the past, but it was genuine. Hannah reached out as well. We talked about our mother and remembered simpler days. Slowly and carefully, something between us began to heal. Months later, my father asked to meet with me. I didn't want to go, but I went. He looked smaller than I remembered, worn down by both time and truth. We sat quietly for a long while before he finally spoke. "I'm sorry." 3 words I had waited my entire life to hear. We talked, truly talked. He acknowledged his mistakes, his pride, and the choices he had made. Nothing could erase what happened, but the wall between us began to crack. Not repaired, but opened. Later, we stood together at my mother's grave. I held her note and read it once again. The greatest gift she left behind wasn't money. It was the truth. Truth exposed every lie, but it also gave us a choice. Hold on to resentment or begin again. I'm still learning how to do that second part. But I know one thing for certain. Without truth, nothing can stand. And with it, even a broken family can begin to heal.